All right. Good evening. This is we're back, and this evening we're going to be talking to Charles Santino. We've talked to him before. He's done a couple web comics, and he also recently did another comic book, which we'll probably talk about within the course of the interview. So I'm going to bring him in now, and we're going to ask him about his new project, Little Fuzzy.
Good evening.
Good evening. How's it going?
Very good.
I was trying to remember the last time we touched base. I know.
I'm not sure.
I think we probably passed at the last Albany Con back in November, and I know that was. I think we may have touched base also at New York, or I don't know. It was one of the years we got together in New York. I can't remember.
They all kind of blend together.
Just like the days.
Except they get a little bit more crowded each year. Last year was the first year where there was a waiting line at every men's room for the entire show, which is a first.
So I know we've talked in the past about your web comic. Walter and help me with this.
Walter Brogan.
The web comic. Yeah.
Danny and Harry, Private Detective.
Danny and Harry, that's it.
Started as a web comic, and then moved over to Marcosia, a British independent publisher. And 4 out of 6 issues have come out. 2 more will come out, and it'll all be collected, and that'll come out within the next few months.
All right, and of course you had the other project that you were working on. I'm sorry, I'm blanking, and I didn't have time to write my notes down. It was the one you were working. What?
Give me a hint.
It was the one you were working with the Filipino artist.
That would have been Oceana.
Right, that's it. Sorry.
That was for a Filipino publisher, and they were doing a series of graphic novels based on Filipino mythology. And they gave me a basic outline, and I took it from there. And it was a nice piece. Unfortunately, I don't think any of those things have been seen here, except for I think 2 or 3 years ago when they brought them to the show in New York.
And I believe that was Epic. Is that correct?
Yeah, Epic spelled with A. Yeah.
Well, I know that you have a current project that you just launched on Indiegogo, Little Fuzzy. You want to kind of give us a small preview of that, and then I'll see if I can show the trailer.
Yeah, Little Fuzzy is a 1962 science fiction novel by H.B. Piper, and he committed suicide in 1964. The book was never renewed. The copyright was never renewed. And at that time, the copyright laws were 28 years. So in 1980, it failed to be renewed. It fell into the public domain. And I've looked at that book for quite some time, and I couldn't figure out why nobody had ever adapted it as a graphic novel, because you didn't need to get the rights. It was just sitting there. So I decided it was time to do it. And I made some pretty drastic changes to the story and put it up on Indiegogo, and we're looking to raise some money to try to do it as a strictly digital graphic novel, although we are trying to partner with a print publisher.
Okay, do you want me to play the video?
Yeah,
then we'll come
right into the video.
All right, let me just do that then. Okay, hopefully that came through with the sound. Let me just stop the video before it plays the next thing because that's so. So how did you? What was your first exposure to this prop? I mean, I've never, honestly, I've never heard of Little Fuzzy before, and as you have on the Indiegogo page, you have you have say it's highly controversial. Could you explain that a little bit?
Sure. I read the book. I think it was probably in the late '70s, and I remember when I saw Return of the Jedi. I remember thinking, "Oh, the Ewoks, they're fuzzies." It was pretty obvious that that was the source of influence for that. And I've been thinking about the book ever since. And anybody that's familiar with it will notice right off the bat that the main character is now a female instead of a male. And I thought long and hard about whether to make that change. And I've decided I'm not going to talk very much about why I made that change, except to say that I think it's a better story and a better book because of it. As far as the reasons why, I'm going to hold off on that for a little while, but it has caused a lot of controversy. I've been called a PC SJW and a sexist. And nobody seems to be. Well, there are some fans of the book that are okay with this, but there's people are assuming for wrong reasons what the change was all about. Two other relatively big changes to the book. It's pretty obvious when you read the book that the fuzzies are intelligent, and this is a big plot point because if they are intelligent, they will be given protection on the planet on which they've been discovered. If they're not, they could probably be wiped out by the mining company that the main character works for. And I decided that it's much more interesting if the forces that are aligned against the fuzzies know that the fuzzies are intelligent and they are ethically challenged, not stupid. It's pretty obvious the fuzzies are intelligent. So I wanted to not make that a big reveal at the end of the story, but make that a bigger part of the story. Some people are okay with that. Other people had a problem with that. Another change is that you want to see the fuzzies. This is a visual medium. So I'm going to try to have every important scene in the story take place in such a way that we'll see the fuzzies. I don't know how I'm going to do that yet. I haven't gotten that far into the adaptation, but my goal is to have fuzzies on every page.
Okay, let me just. So, tell me a little bit about how you went about finding the artist that you're working with. Who is the artist?
The artist is Marco Perugini. He is an Italian artist, and he actually reached out to me within the last year, and he wanted to know if I had any work for him. And he did a short story for me that will be published in a project coming up this fall. And I thought he might be right for this. And he really got into it, and he did the video. I wrote the copy for the video, but he did all the editing. And he had found some music, put it on there that I didn't think was particularly right. I found this music, which was no royalty music, and the artist just asked that the musical artist just asked that we give credit, which we did. And I'm very, very happy with the way the video turned out. And Marco's a really, really good artist. I asked him to draw in a particular style for the other story that he did for me, and I said, let's carry that style over to this. It's more of an animated style, like the DC comics of the '90s that were ties into the Superman and Batman animated cartoons. I really like that style. I'm going to try to use it whenever I can.
So, you've kind of touched on it already, kind of when you were talking about the changes you made. But what is so let's say the elevator pitch of the story? What's the main, theme?
The elevator pitch would be, I guess it's right in the video. The copy that's in the video, cute little creatures are discovered on a mining planet, and our hero has to prove that they are intelligent and fight for them. And if she can't do that, then the mining company that owns the planet will probably wipe them off the face of that planet.
Okay.
So it is a true life or death conflict.
Yes. And so, are there? Let's talk about your Indiegogo. What you've mentioned it, but what are you trying to raise the money for?
To pay the artist primarily. This is digital only. So what we're doing is we're reaching out to publishers and saying, look, we are not going to have a print version of this without a publisher. So if this project succeeds, we won't be cutting into any potential sales that you might have for print. And the reason that we're looking for a publisher is if we make the goal, fine, then it's very easy to bring it to a publisher. But if we don't quite get to the goal, then we want to be able to have a publisher that can write a check and make up the difference. There are plenty of publishers that have back-end deals with no advances. And if you bring a decent looking project to any one of those publishers, they're probably going to take it. But unfortunately, more and more publishers are not writing checks in advance.
So how has this project, if any, varied from the other projects you've done? Let's say I know you did some work you've done work with Marvel, you've done work for yourself. Has it been the same? Has it been different? What challenges have you faced?
This project is very similar in one way, and that is that it's an adaptation. Most of the other adaptations that I've done have been projects that were not in the public domain. So when I adapted Ayn Rand's Anthem, that had to be arranged with with her publisher and the estate. When I adapted Louis L'Amour, same thing. We had to obviously I was working directly with the estate on that. But this, in one way, it's a throwback to one of the first things I did for Fantagraphics. I did an adaptation of Aesop's Fables. That's obviously in the public domain. And believe it or not, that had never been adapted into comics except for in the back of some Classics Illustrated Juniors. There had been some Aesop's Fables, but never as a separate package. So that was a first. So that is similar to this in that they're both public domain. Obviously, the material is very different, but it is an adaptation. They were both adaptations. Other than that, I would say, have I ever adapted science fiction before? No, I don't think so.
Now, are you working on any other projects that you can talk about? Because I know you were doing the Edgar Rice Burroughs.
Yeah, there's
comic.
3 of those, 3 web comics. By the time I got there to Edgar Rice Burroughs, all the fantasy and science fiction had been taken. So I'm doing some stuff I had never known that Edgar Rice Burroughs wrote. These are 2 of them are they're really melodramas, soap operas, melodramas. And Edgar Rice Burroughs was kind of the Stephen King of the 20s. He was a best-selling author, selling better than Faulkner and Hemingway, and very prolific and writing in quite a few different genres. So I'm doing 3 of those for Edgar Rice Burroughs, and I think there are quite a few other local writers and artists that are doing stuff for that webcomic page. The other thing I'm working on will be announced shortly. It is completely creator-owned, and unlike Danny and Harry was co-owned by myself and Walter Brogan. So he would have veto power, I would have veto power. So nothing really happened on that without the consent and cooperation of the both of us. The next project coming up is it's completely directed by me, although 3 artists help create the visuals, so they'll participate in any profits. But this is going to be science fiction. If you could imagine a Judge Dredd perp as the hero.
Okay.
That's as close as I want to get to describing what it is. The first issue is completely done. It'll start premiering and teasing over the summer, and then it'll come out in the fall. The second issue is about halfway through, and Marco has done some work for that comic, and another artist that I discovered who is also overseas, international, is doing the bulk of the work on that. And this, I think, is going to be much more into the mainstream and appeal much more to a superhero audience.
Okay, so where can people go to? And like I'll include the Indiegogo link to the page. Where can people go if they want to find more of your stuff?
Facebook is probably the best place. There is a Facebook page for Little Fuzzy. There's my Facebook page where I talk about whatever I'm working on at the time. I put up recently a post where I put up this logo that you see and 2 others that the artist created. And I said to people, which one do you like and why? And I got more response to that Facebook post than I think anything I've ever posted. I think I've got something like 140 comments right now from people that, other than initially friending them on Facebook, I haven't heard from them since friending them on Facebook, and they chimed in. And it made me realize that when you post something on Facebook, how many people are seeing it regardless of whether they comment or not. Because this made me realize that virtually everybody that commented on that post probably saw all my other posts, but this one really engaged them for whatever reason. And it was interesting to see that the votes, if you will, were split pretty evenly between the three logos. That was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say Indiegogo, Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Twitter. I don't do too much with either of those, but I try to get something out there when I can. I just figured out how to post on Instagram from a desktop computer. Did you know that you can do that?
No, I did not know that.
Yeah, if you go to YouTube, you'll see I think he's a British fellow who shows you how to do it. It's remarkably easy. When I first showed the tutorial, you see coding. He opens a coding window,
Mm-hmm.
and I started to sweat. I thought, oh no, I'm not getting into the coding. But then his cursor goes up to this little box right near the coding. He said, just click on this box. And all of a sudden you see the mobile version of Instagram on your desktop. You refresh the screen, and then you see all the prompts at the bottom, how to create a new post and get a picture and put a caption on it. And I really don't like using Instagram. Before that, I didn't like using it because you had to go through a device like a phone or an iPad, and it's very cumbersome, and I don't like it at all. But the clouds really parted for me when I saw this video.
So is there anything that you're currently reading or rereading that you would recommend to people who are looking for something to check out?
Anything by Richard Corben. Now, Richard Corben has been working since the early 70s. He started out as an underground cartoonist. He then moved over to, excuse me, to heavy metal and to the Warren horror books. And he's been publishing very consistently ever since. Currently, most of his stuff is published by Dark Horse. He's running a series in heavy metal. The guy has got to be in his mid to late 70s. I don't think he's lost a step in his art. He writes and draws his material. In the past, he has not written everything he's drawn, but quite a bit of it. He's got a completely unique style that when you see it, you know when you're looking at Richard Corben stuff. He doesn't look like anybody else. I would say anything by him. The current series in heavy metal looks great, but like so many people, I'm going to wait for that to be collected.
Okay, well, is there anything else that maybe I didn't ask that you'd like to mention or, let people know about?
Let's see. I can't say enough about visual storytelling and the trend over the last few years to put the writers up on a pedestal rather than the artists. When I first started reading comics, fandom, the artist was the driver.
Mm-hmm.
And starting around, I don't know, maybe 15, 20 years ago, the writer really became the star. And so you get these dialogue-driven comics that could easily be radio dramas. Some of them don't even seem to really need pictures. I think this is a rather distressing trend in comics. And one of the things that I do, that there may be one or two other writers who do this, and I mean writers who are not also artists, is I sketch my stories out. I write a basic plot. I start out with a 25-word synopsis or summary. And if it sounds good in 25 words, I'll proceed. And until I get those 25 words down, I don't proceed. I then write a very brief synopsis that will run maybe a page for every 5 to 10 comic book pages. Once that plot and the characters and everything is all there and it reads just fine, then I actually start drawing. And if I showed you these drawings, you'd say, I don't know what I'm looking at. I don't know what I'm looking at 5 minutes afterwards, but I quickly sketch out the story and to see if it's going to look good. And then I write the script based on my breakdowns. The story will change quite a bit when I do those breakdowns, because something that looked good on paper in words isn't going to work visually. A big mistake that most writers make, some guys can get away with it, Jim Starlin can get away with it, is a lot of panels on the page. If I get 5 panels on the page, I start getting a little nervous that it might be too cramped. And I know that 5 panels doesn't sound like a lot. I also try to keep as 80 words, 80 or fewer words. A lot of books about writing comics will say 200, 220 words tops on a page. You can do it, but I try to keep it limited to about 80.
Okay, that's good. That's very interesting. So, I'm gonna, if you don't have anything else, I'm just gonna say, kind of to wrap up here. Whenever you have anything that you'd like to, talk about or promote, then you're more than welcome to come back, and talk to us about it, and we'd love to hear it from here.
That'll be very soon.
Okay, well,
that'll probably be probably June or July. Yeah.
Okay.
And all the artwork for that book I mentioned is completely done, so there'll be a lot to show at that time. And
hopefully we'll get to we'll run into each other at a con sometime soon.
If they have another one, yeah.
Well, yeah, but I was just trying not to go there. But all right, well, take care of yourself. Stay safe.
Thank you very much for the opportunity and for showing that video.
All right, and we'll be talking to you.
Thanks a lot. Take care.
All right,
Bye-bye.
later.